All right, buckle up, because this story is an absolute wild ride. You've got this tiny, quiet kingdom, a global financial titan, and a secret that has basically started to pull the thread on an 80-year-old system. This is the story of how the entire game of money is being rewritten. And the crazy part is, it all kind of started by accident.
So get this. It all kicks off because some person is just randomly scrolling around on Google Earth. You know, as you do. They're looking over the super remote mountains of Bhutan, and they spot something weird. Right there, next to these gigantic hydroelectric dams, are these massive, totally unmarked industrial buildings. What in the world are they hiding up there?
Well, it turns out the Kingdom of Bhutan had been for years secretly mining Bitcoin. I mean, no big press conferences, no announcements, no celebratory tweets. They just quietly plugged in a bunch of machines and started stacking sats. And not a single soul had a clue.
And when I say stacking, I mean they were really stacking. Their secret stash is now worth an estimated $1.3 billion. And that number, it's a mind-blowing 40% of their entire GDP. To put that into perspective, their Bitcoin is worth more than pretty much everything else their government owns, combined.
You know, as one researcher put it, they are the poster child for stay humble, stack sats. It's crypto speak for just quietly building your wealth without making a big fuss. See, while other countries were making flashy announcements, Bhutan just kept its head down and kept mining. They knew that the second you tell the world you're doing this, a certain organization tends to come knocking with some very serious concerns.
And that brings us to the villain of our story, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. To really get why Bhutan's secret is such a big deal, you first have to understand the game the IMF has been playing with countries for the last, 80 years.
And boy, do they have a playbook. It's a classic, really. Step 1. Find a country that's totally desperate for cash and offer a very helpful loan. Step 2. Attach some conditions. Just a few, tiny little strings. Step 3. If they can't pay, devalue their currency and steal their citizens' savings. And for the grand finale, Step 4. When they inevitably default, you seize their national assets. It's simple, it's effective, and it's spectacularly destructive.
Yeah, these are not your friendly neighborhood bank loans. As analyst Simon Dixon puts it, they are predatory by design. The conditions often force a country to spend the loan money on products from the lender's country. So it's less of a loan and more of a corporate coupon. And if you can't pay it back, well, they can claim the rights to your oil, your lithium, even your land for a military base.
And this is the real-world fallout. Countries are forced to completely restructure their economies. They stop growing food for their own citizens and start growing cash crops, like cocoa or cotton, to export. So in Ghana, over half their farmable land became dedicated to cocoa. In Gambia, it was 70% for groundnuts. So on paper, the GDP looks great. But in reality, the people are getting poorer, because now they have to import their food at much higher prices. It's a feature, not a bug.
So for 80 years, the choice has been pretty simple. You take the IMF deal, or you face total economic collapse. But Bhutan found a third option, and they were just a couple of months away from having to make that awful choice themselves. The pandemic completely wiped out their tourism industry. Their foreign currency reserves were about to hit zero. We're talking maybe 2 or 3 months before they couldn't pay for essential stuff like food, medicine, and fuel. And this level of desperation is exactly when the IMF loves to show up with its helping hand.
But Bhutan had an ace up its sleeve. See, they've got these massive hydroelectric dams that, during the rainy season, produce way more power than the country can even use. All that extra energy would literally just spill over the side of the dam and be completely wasted. So what did they do? They pointed all that free, zero-cost energy at Bitcoin miners. It was an absolute stroke of genius.
I mean, just look at the difference here. The IMF has always screeched that adopting Bitcoin would destabilize your economy, wreck your energy grid, and scare away investors. So what actually happened to Bhutan? Oh, they just went from near total collapse to giving government workers like teachers and nurses salary raises of up to 76%. They upgraded their national infrastructure and refurbished their airport. They didn't just avoid collapse, they thrived. It's almost comical how wrong all the predictions were.
Now, at this point, you could just write Bhutan off as a cute little anomaly, a small mountain kingdom that just got lucky. But what they did wasn't just a one-off. It was a proof of concept. And now a much, much bigger country is looking to copy their playbook.
Okay, just to set the scale here, Bhutan has a population of about 800,000 people. A small country, for sure. Just keep that number in your head for a second.
Because the next domino about to fall is Pakistan. That's right, the world's sixth most populous country has announced it wants to start mining Bitcoin with its own wasted energy.
And the scale here is just staggering. Pakistan is talking about dedicating 2,000 megawatts of stranded energy to mining. To put that in perspective for you, that is enough energy to power 2 million homes. And it represents a full 10% of the entire Bitcoin network's current power consumption. This is a massive, massive move.
So we've gone from a nation of 800,000 to a nation of 240 million. This is not a quirky little story anymore. This is a major global shift happening right in front of us.
And here is where the geopolitics get really spicy. See, Pakistan has a ton of IMF debt, which should give the IMF all the leverage to shut this down. But they can't. Why? Because now Pakistan can just go to China for a loan. And China, who would love nothing more than to weaken global dependency on the US dollar, is not going to stop them. The IMF's monopoly on help has been broken. Their bluff has officially been called.
And this brings us to the final phase. This isn't just about economics anymore. It's about pure strategy. This is game theory playing out on a global scale. We are approaching the point of no return, and we're doing it fast.
So, let me just ask you a question. Who is Pakistan's biggest and most important regional rival? The one country that watches every single strategic move Pakistan makes like a hawk.
That's right, India, a nation of 1.4 billion people. If Pakistan starts building up its own monetary sovereignty completely outside of the traditional system, can India really afford to just sit back and watch? The answer is no. Not responding is no longer an option.
This right here is the dilemma that every finance minister in the world is now facing. Do you stick with the IMF path where your currency is guaranteed to devalue and you're forever dependent on foreign powers, or do you take the Bitcoin path where you build your own sovereign wealth and become independent, even if it means you're navigating completely new and, yeah, volatile territory? And this is the trap. As more and more countries start to make this choice, the risk actually flips. Suddenly, the biggest risk isn't joining in. It's being the last one left holding onto the old system. The price of getting in on this new sovereign asset only goes up from here. That, my friends, is game theory in its purest form.
Bhutan quietly lit a fuse. Pakistan is about to turn it into a bonfire. This isn't about short-term price charts. This is about entire nations finding an exit from a system that has been their only option for nearly a century. The old system had a pretty good 80-year run. The question now is, how long will this new one last?